Today we're picking out our parts for the computer in this part of the step-by-step guide to building your own PC. So let's do it. Welcome back to Dad Talks Tech. My name is Jason. Thank you so much for being here. We're continuing our step-by-step guide to building your own computer, and if you missed the first couple parts of the series, you can take a look. You can take a look at the links in the description and up in the corner for those videos. Today we're going to start picking out our components for the computer that we are building. This can be a lot of fun or seriously exhausting if you don't have a clue what you're looking for. A couple of things before we start shopping. When you are deciding what components you want to put inside the computer, there are a few considerations that you want to keep in mind. For one, what are you going to be using the computer for? Will it be mostly gaming, photo editing, video editing, or are you just looking for something that will run some productivity applications like Office or G Suite? And secondly, what is your budget? We can go crazy if we want, but you still probably have a certain amount of money that you don't want to spend more on. For me, I'm doing some gaming, and I'd like to be able to get a decent FPS at 1440 resolution. I also do a fair amount of video and photo editing, so faster storage is important to me, as well as having better multi-core performance. For my budget, I'd like to stay around $1,200. So let's head over to the computer and we'll get things started. Alright, so we're over here on the computer. I'm on a website called PCPartPicker.com. It's basically a site that lets you choose your components, and it shows you pricing from different sites like Newegg and Amazon and a few others. There are other part picker services out there. Newegg has their own, Micro Center has their own, which is nice, but they only show the products and the pricing from Newegg or Micro Center or wherever it's from. So that's why we're going to PCPartPicker.com. So this is the main site. They do have a bunch of other builds that other people have put together and kind of put it as a suggestion. And some of them are pretty good, and some of them probably things that you could change. It just kind of depends on what you find. So what we're going to do is go up here to the system builder, and that brings us to a list of basically all the components that you need. And we're just going to start with the CPU because that's on the top, so we'll do that. So we'll choose the CPU. The way you want to do this is there are different radio buttons down here that you can choose if you're specifically looking for an AMD, which I am, or Intel, so you can do that there, and then it gets rid of everything else. And from there, you can separate by price, just by clicking this little thing, and it'll show you a bunch of stuff that, Athlon 2 is awesome. Basically a bunch of stuff that you may or may not want. So from there you can filter down by clock speeds down here, what type you want. I already know that I want a 3600 AMD, which is going for right around $150 some, so I'll find it here. It's $159.99, and the reason I'm going with the AMD versus Intel is that I want to do a little bit more multi-core type workloads, and AMD is slightly better at that in most cases, or at least in the current generation. So basically you just want to choose the processor that you're looking for, so I'm going to click add right here, and it's added to your build. It puts the pricing on here as the cheapest that it can find, and even where it's from, and once you have all this together, you can actually buy it straight from here, and it'll send you to the website to pick it up from Amazon or Newegg or wherever it is. Now for the CPU cooler, I'm not going to choose the CPU cooler on this one right now. The Ryzen 5 3600 does come with the Wraith cooler, which will do for what I want it to do right now. It's a decent stock cooler. This probably will be the first thing that I do upgrade, though. I'll probably add an air cooler of some sort. So I'm just going to skip that, but you can choose air cooler or, all-in-one water cooling, whatever it might be. It can help you look out there. Okay, so let's choose our motherboard. Same kind of things here. You can sort by on the left. So I know I want an ATX motherboard. It's basically the size and form factor. And I know that I want a AMD B550. The reason for that is a couple things. The B550 is slightly less in price as comparable boards for an X570. But still offers you the 4th gen PCIe speeds, specifically on the storage is what I'm looking for. The It's on the first graphics card slot as well, but graphics cards today haven't quite reached the throttle of PCIe 3 yet, so you're not getting a ton of benefit there, at least in this current generation. Where you are getting it though is in storage, so that's one of the places that I definitely want to keep it. And I don't need both of my M.2 slots to be PCIe Gen 4, so happy to have the one slot of M.2 be PCIe Gen 4. My second reason for B550 over X570 is the X570 requires active cooling on the chipset. So there's a little fan that sits on the chipset. It actually spins, and from what I hear from a lot of reviews is that it's sort of loud, and so I want to keep it as quiet as possible. So of these B550 boards, again, we can separate by price, so I will do that. I have been doing a little bit of research and wanted to keep the pricing down a little bit, but still wanted to have the pieces that I needed. So I am choosing this Gigabyte B550 Aorus Elite, basically because it has everything that I need. The only thing it's kind of missing is USB-C, which I don't use currently, and I can always add a PCIe card in the future if for some reason I do need that. It's also not Wi-Fi, which I hardwire all my desktops anyway, so that's not a big deal. So I'll do the 159 now. If I was to spend a little bit more money, I would probably jump to this B550 Tomahawk from MSI, and it does add USB-C for that. And the B450 Tomahawk was a solid motherboard, and so the B550, from everything I've seen, is continuing on that and making the cooling, VRM cooling, even better. So, but for now, I'm going to choose the Gigabyte Aorus Elite at $159.99, and we'll head to, now for me, I'm looking for 16 gigabytes of RAM, but I want to take advantage of the dual channel that's available on the motherboard. So I want to do the 2x8s, which I will choose down here. And from there, you can actually choose your speeds if you want to. So I'm actually looking at a 3600, and I chose 3600 because AMD works really well on the faster speeds, but there is a point where it becomes not as beneficial, and that point is about 3600 on this particular motherboard. So that's where I'm going to put. We'll put those together. I don't care about the color of the board itself. However, I do want some RGB. I happen to really like the G.Skill Trident Z Neos, and so I just like the way they look, and G.Skill is a solid brand for RAM. And so I like these ones that have the RGB. They're pretty cool. I like them. It's a good look. It's a good price. So I'm going to throw that on there for 2 sticks at just under $100. Again, you can save some money by not going RGB on the RAM. Totally up to you, depending on what the look you want to go with. Okay, on to storage. So for storage, Western Digital gave me a 1TB black SN750 NVMe SSD. So I'm going to go with that. However, if you wanted to kind of look around on this, it's basically the same type of thing. You want to look at SSD. I want M.2 2280, and you can change the cache capacity here anywhere from, I guess, 8 gig to 18 terabyte, which I didn't know they made one that large just yet. But anyway, I'm going to do this Western Digital SN750, the 1 terabyte, because that's what I have. You can save some money by going with a 500 gig. There should be plenty enough for your OS in any games, unless you're playing Modern Warfare Warzone, which takes up like 200 and some odd gigs on its own. But any route, I'm going to also be adding a Seagate 2 terabyte Barracuda hard drive, spinning disk drive, that I'm pulling from my old computer. So that'll add me some storage as well. Moving on, it's time to look at the video card. This is where we can get a little crazy. Like I mentioned, I'm a bit of a gamer, and so I'm looking to hit somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 FPS in 1440 resolution. And from everything I've looked at, there are a few cards that I could really look at. NVIDIA's RTX 2060 Super and above, and AMD's RX 5600 XT and above. I chose the 5700 XT because in testing that I've seen, it was beating the 2060 Super and was closer in performance to the 2070s at about $100 savings. So again, new generations of graphics cards from both AMD and NVIDIA are releasing very soon, and so all of that could change by the end of the year. The specific card that I chose was the Asus TUF Gaming X3 EVO OC. There's a few reasons for this. One, it had everything that I needed on it, and Newegg had a sale on it when I bought it that actually put it way down here, closer to the ASRock Challenger OC pricing. So it's a great deal. So that's what I went with. You could definitely go with that ASRock Challenger OC. I've heard some great things on it, some great reviews. So I wouldn't think twice about using something like that. So that leaves us with just a couple things left here: the power supply and the case. One nice thing about this PC part picker is that as you're adding things to the list, it throws in the estimated wattages for each of those things. So you can use that to kind of calculate what you need for your power supply. I like to give myself a little headroom, and plus, like I mentioned, I probably want to add a CPU cooler in the near future, so I'm going to give myself a little bit above that 384, right? So in general, I probably go to like a 600 watt on this one, especially given what I'm wanting to add on to it. So I'm going to look at these power supplies, and right away I see this 650 Cooler Master Gold modular, fully modular power supply, which for $99 is a great price. So I'm going to choose that. You could also, again, go down here, take a look at the different power supplies. If you think you need, 1,000 watts, you can do some adjustments there and do everything you need. You can also pick between modular and semi-modular, or no modularization at all. Basically, what that means is that the fully modular ones have no cables attached to them at all, and you just plug in what you need. So the motherboard cable, the PCIe cables, and if you need any SATA cables for powering your hard drives or any peripherals. A fully modular power supply gives you some capabilities to save a little bit of cable management space in the back in the future. So same with semi. The difference between semi and fully modular is that semi already has the motherboard and CPU power cables already attached, and then you can add on additional ones after that. Non-modular one has all your cables attached and becomes sort of a big mess. Not that it's terrible, but it makes it harder to work with on the back end. So I'm going to choose this Cooler Master one, and I think I'll probably do a video on the difference of some of the power supplies as well in the future. All right, from there, we are on to the case. So choosing a case, the biggest things we want to look at here, does it fit what we need? So our motherboard form factor is all the way down here. We chose an ATX motherboard, so we're going to choose an ATX motherboard form factor. That cancels out all the ITX and only micro ATX cases, so it gives us a little bit less to worry about. Now, I have had my eye on this Lian Li Landcool 2X. It is a nice case. From all the reviews I hear, it's going to be amazing, so I want to try this out. It is a little bit on the, mid-size, I guess. You can definitely find cases somewhere in the, $50 to $60 price range. But what you want to kind of pay attention to, one, does it fit your motherboard, like we mentioned? And two, what does it look like airflow is going to be like? So you can kind of see that some of these are closed off in front, and maybe they don't have the best airflow. It's kind of dependent. Take a look and see. There's all sorts of reviews out there that do airflow testing. Gamers Nexus has some great reviews on pretty much all the cases, or at least all the major cases that come out. But I'm going to choose this Lian Li, so I will add it to my case. Lastly, you will need a license of Windows 10, and you can add that here under the operating system. I'm not going to add that here because there are a few other places that sell OEM versions and those kind of things. I'm not going to show you where those are because I'm not 100% sure on the legitness of it, and working with Microsoft for quite some time in my job, it's kind of an iffy area. So I'll leave it at that. All right, now that we have everything on there, there's a few things to take note of. One, do we have the correct wattage of our power supply for our estimated wattage up here? We do, so we're good. And this compatibility right here will show some notes. So you can hit the C notes below, and it'll show you all of the notes that it thinks might cause some issues with your build. So for instance, this says the Lian Li 2 Mid-tower case has a front panel USB 3.2 Type-C port, which is what I mentioned that the Aorus Elite ATX motherboard does not have. So it'll point that out to you. If that Type-C port is important to you, you would want to change your motherboard here. Like I said, not important to me, so I'm going to let it go. And then I've seen this a lot where it doesn't show the physical dimensions on some of the CPU cooler and RAM clearances and those kind of things. Part of that is the RAM I chose is pretty tall, and so that might cause some issues with some coolers, not the stock cooler, but some of the more aftermarket coolers that you might look in the future. So that's just something to keep in mind. This will also show some of the price history on some of your pieces as to, does it make sense to wait to find better deals. But everything I've been looking at here is pretty flat. There's some small fluctuations here and there, but looking pretty good. And this gives us our final estimated price before taxes and shipping and all that fun stuff. Just under $1,200, which is what I was aiming for. So we are pretty good to go. If I wanted to add more on here, the CPU cooler is probably where I'd go. Or I would add another 16 gigs of RAM to make it 32 total, which is better for video processing and those kind of things, which I do quite often. So that may be an addition fairly soon as well. I should also note that this does not include a monitor or mouse and keyboard and those kind of things, so make sure you take that into account when you're putting your budget together, or just take it from the one you already have. So next time we're going to put this thing all together. I'm going to show you step by step how to put in the processor, the RAM, where it all goes, how it all goes together, things to keep an eye out for, and things that might trip you up. So stay tuned for that, and until then, as always, comments and questions are welcome. Please put those below, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Dad Talks Tech.